Now we have seen how to write if statements. Let us use it at a fun application, which is simulating a coin flip. So we'd like to write a Python program that simulates a coin flip. So each time the program runs, it should display either heads or tails. When you flip a coin, it either lands on its head or on its tail. If you flip the coin a number of times, the sequence of heads and tails is somewhat unpredictable. Provided that you have a fair coin, this process of flipping a coin is called a random process. To implement a random process in computer code, you need some source of randomness. One possibility here is to use a random number generator. A random number generator is a process that generates a set of numbers between two limits in an unpredictable pattern. Random number generators provide a source of randomness to computer applications. And it turns out that randomness is useful in many applications, such as computer games, computer simulations, cryptography, statistical sampling, optimization algorithms, and so on. In Python, you can use the random module to provide functions for generating some kind of random numbers. These are called pseudo-random number generators. Now, we're not going to touch on the difference between a real random number generator and a pseudo-random number generator, since pseudo-random number generators will be sufficient for the basic applications that we will use random number generators for. Python has a built-in module that you can use to generate random numbers, and this is called the random module. So let's see how to use the random module and how to see few of the functions that are available inside the random module. So to start using the random module, you need to first import it. So you can start by typing the import keyword and then type the word random. And this makes the functions of the random module available to you. We will look at three functions in the random module, and there are many more which you can explore by going through the Python documentation. So we will first look at the function called random. So if you type random for the random module and then type the function name, which is random, this is a function that does not take any arguments, and it simply returns a float that is between 0 and 1. So if you hit enter here, you will get a random number that is greater than 0 and less than or equal to 1. And if you type this function again, you will see that you will get a different number from the one that you have got before. And this is basically, the source of randomness. Each time you run this function, you get a different number from the one that you have got the previous time. So if you run it again, you get 0.9. You run it again, you get 0.2, and so on. And it's very difficult to predict what is the pattern that you'll get. So it's kind of this pattern is unpredictable in some sense. So this can be used as a source of randomness in your programs. Another function that you can use is the uniform function. And unlike the random function, you can pass some arguments to this function. So for example, let's say random dot uniform. So uniform, and if you pass it, let's say two numbers, and you pass it, let's give it 2.5 and 10.0. What does this function will do? It will give you back a random float that is between or greater than or equal to 2.5 but less than 10. So the upper limit here is not included, or it's not returned, it's not going to be returned by the function. So this will give you anything that is greater than or equal to 2.5 and less than 10.0. So, and it will always be a float. So you might be getting a number that is 8.13. If you run it again, you get 8.10, and you get 3.6, and again 3.0. Now if you want to get really good random numbers, you need to increase the range. So let's try random dot uniform, and let's give it really big range. So we'll go from minus 1000 to 1000. Okay, so you get minus 969, minus 401, 344. Now you're getting positive numbers, 297, 849, minus 80.78. So, you know, the bigger the range, the more randomness you could get in your program. The one that we'll use for the coin flip is a simpler function which returns an int, and that's called randint. And this is how you call it. So random.randint. And here you give it two integers. So let's say we want to take an integer that is, or we want a random number that is less than or equal, or sorry, a random number that is greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 10. So both the 1 and the 10 are included in the range of the random numbers that are returned by this function. So if you press enter, you get a 9. You press enter again, you get 10. So now the upper limit is included in the sequence of random number that can be returned by this function. You press it again, you get a 4. Press it again, you get a 2, and so on. So each time you press enter, you get a random number that is between 1 and 10. And this is the function that we will use to simulate our coin flip. So here I've started writing the source code for the program. So I started by putting down the comments. So the first thing in our program, we need to import the random module. So we need to import random. And then we need to get some random number. So let's get a number. So random, or let's create another variable name. We're gonna call it randval. So our random value will be random.randint, and we'll get a random number between 1 and 10. Okay, so get random number between 1 and 10. Now, to simulate whether it is heads or tails, let's say that the random value is in the lowest 5 numbers. So let's say it is between 1 and 5. We'll consider that the coin landed on its head. So if randval less than or equal to 5, we will say print heads. Else, if the random number is greater than or equal to 6, so let's say if it is 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, then we'll consider it as that we'll consider the coin landed in its tails. So print tails. Okay, so this simple program now, when we run it, it will print at one point in time heads, and if we run it again, it might print tails. So let's run this program. So we run it for the first time, we get heads. Let's run it again. Again we get heads. Let's run it again. Now we get tails. Run it again, you get heads, you get heads, you get heads. Well, sometimes you might get, a number of these in a row. Again, some heads, tails. Are we going to get tails 3 times? Well, yes, we got tails 3 times. But it is really not, you cannot really predict the sequence. And here I might be getting a sequence which is different from the sequence that you might get when you run this program in your own computer. So this is a program in Python that simulates how you can flip a coin And this is basically an introduction to random number generators and to the random module in Python.